Kia ora tātou, and good evening everyone. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Gus Fisher Gallery, part of the University of Auckland. I'm Diane Brand. I took over as the Dean of NICAI on the 15th of July, so this is my first opportunity to speak to you all in my new role. In particular, I'd like to welcome Rana Davenport, the new director of the Art Gallery, Auckland Art Gallery here, and Professor Juliette Gerard, the chair of the Royal Society in New Zealand, and Professor Linda Tuiwai-Smith, chair of the Social Sciences panel of the Marsden Fund. It's my pleasure to be extending hospitality to you all tonight to celebrate this opening of this exhibition that is part of a larger Marsden-funded research project, Pornography in the Public Eye. I would like to extend a special greeting to colleagues from the Faculty of Science and in particular Associate Professor Nicola Gavey, Principal Investigator for the research project, who will speak shortly, followed by Linda Tyler, who will thank all the artists for their participation. First, though, we have a very important guest from the Queensland Art Gallery, who has been flown over especially to participate in tomorrow's public program at the gallery. Please welcome Julie Ewington, Curatorial Manager, Australian Art at Queensland Art Gallery.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you for inviting me to come to Auckland to see this exhibition, A Different View, Artists Address Pornography, to speak here and to play a very small part in what is a very important university research project, which is, as Diane said, pornography in the public eye. It's a great pleasure to be here in New Zealand again. I come as often as I can, and to be at the Gus Fisher tonight. First of all, I want to say that as part of a larger multidisciplinary project, the exhibition A Different View, Artists Address Pornography, is truly inspired. It's open and generous and inquiring, and most importantly, it's tolerant of divergent opinions and views, but without being supine, that was my one joke, without being supine or lazily laissez-faire. This is no liberal way out that you're being offered here. On the contrary, this exhibition embodies a tough set of questions. It's basically a set of questions, in fact, rather than answers. And it's a kind of conversation. A Different View brings together into this conversation a very wide range of artists indeed, 20 artists in all, and they work in a great variety of media, so that there's a great number of different and even contesting views presented here in the spaces of the Gus Fisher Gallery. What strikes me is that asking artists to address pornography goes straight to the heart of a set of very fascinating and compelling conjunctions. Those connecting desire, here expressed sexually, and the visual realm, together with the overarching social conventions that hold our daily life in place, at least more or less, and for most of the time. For artists, more than any of us, inhabit these very crossroads, these conjunctions that bring together any number of disparate regimes of desire, of all sorts of image-making practices, whether in the conventional art world or in community or in a variety of mass media locations. And in doing so, in working at these conjunctions, artists operate in all sorts of social locations, from the schoolroom to the bibliophile's library, there are still such things, to the cinema, to the internet, all those places in which contemporary society understands itself through images. So these are the places for which artists make their work. So who better to contribute to the investigation into the contemporary cultural politics of pornography than those who work with images, often including images about sex. This is, if you like, the coalface. And what are these artists being asked to do here? I like the astute language of the exhibition title very much. The artists are asked to address pornography. They don't respond to it or critique it, or they're not even asked to celebrate it. They have been selected and invited to address pornography, with all that means in terms of contributions that I said before may be discrepant or divergent and actually even contradictory. You're going to see that. It's also, most importantly, I think, an invitation to be active, to accept responsibility for the way in which one thinks about pornography. And the artists have responded magnificently and often fearlessly, and I salute you all. I also applaud the openness of the invitation at the same time as I applaud the openness of the invitation at the same time as I acknowledge the fine discriminations that have been made by the curators in the selection of the artists and their works. I hope you'll agree that Linda Tyler and Virginia Brown and Nicola Gavey, who's over there, have done a magnificent job in bringing together such a vibrant and challenging exhibition, and I'll come back to the word challenging a bit later on. Now, the radical heterogeneity that you'll see in A Different View goes to the heart of the broader research project that Diane mentioned, and this exhibition is embedded in that project. Pornography in the Public Eye has set out very ambitiously to examine the public discourses around pornography now in New Zealand. And it has chosen to do this when, as Nicola Gavey says in her catalogue essay, and I quote, "There might be the breathing space to forge a different path through the complicated contemporary cultural politics of pornography." I hope this is so, for as Nicola argues, I do think this is a timely project. The noughties are a very different time from the 1980s, the heyday of the American feminist-led anti-pornography movements. It's a really different time. In some ways, the challenges today of what I'll call industrial pornography are far greater than they were then, at the same time as the social discourses around difference are actually far more nuanced and far more comprehensive. I think it's a very interesting time to undertake this project. Now, I've watched these changes around the discourses around pornography in my own life and professional career. A very, very long time ago, when I was in my first year of university studies in art theory and history, I chose for my very first essay, from a number of topics, "Can pornography be art?" After arguing around the topic for several pages in what I take to be typical undergraduate fashion, apologies to any undergraduates in the audience, I finally argued that yes, pornography could be art. In the margin of the text, my professor wrote, "At last." And finally, on page 3, I was addressing the topic, So there, in that time, the essay question went to the limit of current conventions governing art as fine art, in a time when the boundaries of art were becoming increasingly both more elastic and more porous. Today, and seeing this exhibition around us, in the knowledge of the understanding that art always exists in its particular social context, I might reframe the question for students in 2013 in this way. It's more wordy. What aspects of contemporary pornographic imageries and practices are contrary to current social understandings and compacts between artists and their audiences? So it's really about social negotiation. And over the decades since that essay, which is really a long time ago, as a working curator, it has fallen to me from time to time to advocate for collecting and exhibiting works that various colleagues and audience have found, as they say, I'll use that word again, challenging, on account of their sexual content and their bodily frankness. I do believe that far-off university essay topic set by Donald Brooke started preparing me for thinking through these issues in my working life. Whether it was working to deliver the Robert Mapplethorpe exhibition at Sydney's Museum of Contemporary Art in 1995, yes, the famed New South Wales Vice Squad did come to the museum to visit the show, or whether it was showing works at Queensland Art Gallery and Gallery of Modern Art by the Australian Del Catherine Barton that got the front page of the Courier Mail on Saturday and was hosed down on the Monday, or whether it was showing the very, very extraordinary work by Jose Legaspi from the Philippines, which will come out again in another month or so. In all these instances, not to mention Juan de Vela and Bill Henson and all of the controversies that we've had, I have had to think as a working professional through the politics of visualising sex, sexuality. This is not an issue, in short, in human or artistic or social terms, which will go away. So I think that A Different View, Artists Address Pornography, is exactly the sort of seriously interrogative project that a university and its gallery can address. I applaud the commitment of the university and its staff, including the fabulous team here at the Gus Fisher Gallery, for being prepared to take on a topic and works that will confront and disturb and provoke reactions from the community that might be, in some cases, not only difficult, but rather uncomfortable. What I think is so commendable in all this is that the project and the exhibition are prepared to speak up and to speak out and to intelligently articulate what is at stake here, which I take to be human freedom and dignity in all its polymorphous and perverse glory. You'll see some of that glory in this show. By that I mean that in negotiating the visualisation of sex and sexuality, the fundamental as well as accidental aspects of human life and society are engaged. These are crucial questions for humanity and, if you'll forgive the pun, Diane, for the humanities as well. Seeing such a wide-open exhibition so gutsy and brave and out there reminds me exactly how robust public discourses are in this country and how vigorous the debates are that you engage here. I always tell Australian friends that the Kiwi expression, "I copped a bit of flack," invariably means that the discussion included a complete stoush, right? It was completely full on. But then that is one of the glories of a free and open society. I do wish you all a very fine argumentative time with a different view. Artists address pornography. That is its purpose, to stimulate discussion. It's why universities exist, it's what artists desire, and it's what their works deserve. Thank you.
Thanks for that response to the exhibition, Julie, and for your support of the Gus Fisher Gallery and its public programs. Just a reminder that the public program will be taking place at 1 p.m. tomorrow at the gallery. Now I'd like to ask Associate Professor Nicola Gavey of the Psychology Department at the University of Auckland to tell us a little about the background to the exhibition and the Marsden-funded research project that she's involved with. Please welcome Nicola.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Julie, for such generous comments and, you know, in a sense, reflecting our intentions so well, so thank you very much. I'm just going to say a little bit to start with about pornography and about the wider project. I won't say too much, but just starting with pornography, anywhere, anytime now, with the tap of a screen, pornography is accessible in a way that could barely have been imagined even a decade ago. So porn consumption that was once furtive and underground is now mainstream, at least for men. Recent New Zealand research by my colleague Ginny Brown, who's also he's here, and also involved in the project, and Gareth Terry, they found that around 1/3 of men watch pornography regularly, and only around 14% of men don't watch pornography at all. For women, the pattern was almost the mirror reverse. So about 60% of women said they don't use pornography at all. Yet despite these data indicating that pornography has become a normative part of many men's lives, as an issue, as something that we can talk about and think about seriously, it still lurks in the shadows. It's everywhere, but it's nowhere on the agenda for public discussion. So this wasn't true back in the 1980s and the 1990s, and it isn't true now in other parts of the world. So debate has been stirring quite actively over the last few years in the UK, for example, in the US. But the form of the debate overseas is often very polarising. It breaks down into deadlock pro and anti positions. In academic and activist circles on the one side, critics can appear to ignore the possibility that pornography could play a role in expanding sexual horizons and making room for plurality and diversity. But on the other side, advocates of porn can seem oblivious to how much of the sex, which I don't think it always is sex, depicted in mainstream pornography is aggressive, dehumanising and humiliating towards women. Just as they can appear to ignore its recycling of racialised and racist stereotypical depictions of people. The silence around these issues effectively legitimates misogyny and racism in the service of individual sexual pleasure. So there are big questions about what this means for a society like ours that values inclusiveness and egalitarianism. Perhaps, though, if we don't keep ignoring it, we could regard the current public silence in New Zealand as an opportunity. With relative silence, there comes less well-trodden paths to the pro and anti sort of polar positions. We can see this relative silence, therefore, Julie quoted me on this, as providing a breathing space, for the possibility of a path for exploring the kind of contemporary cultural politics of all these issues in a different way. So maybe that means we're better positioned to set out a path towards constructive dialogue instead, rather than getting stuck in entrenched black and white politics, where the messages are clear, but where people stay trapped in their own corners and just talk past each other. So this exhibition sits within the wider project that Julie and Diane have mentioned, and the aim of this project is to try and put pornography on the table for public discussion. What is pornography now? What is its place in our society? How do we make sense of it? How do we move beyond it? How do we move beyond the way in which it operates sometimes as a closet for misogyny and racism? And how is it linked to broader representations in the public sphere of women, men and sex? Art and other forms of creative work can play a vital role in opening up room for exploring these kinds of questions. Art can spark reactions and ways of seeing that can move us and shift us, sometimes in unpredictable directions. And bringing together artists with diverse perspectives and different experiences in relation to pornography, gender and sexuality, as well as in relation to ethnicity, generation and other important dimensions, we've aimed to create a space that is inclusive and challenging at the same time. Judy Darragh was interviewed on the radio this week, and she said that the show provides a catalyst. Through art, new ways of seeing are possible and new questions come to light. The exhibition, we hope, will provide a catalyst for conversation and for change, bringing issues into public view and opening up spaces, both literal spaces, the gallery, the radio, the website, which has gone live overnight, we're very pleased to announce, and metaphorical spaces, new questions, frameworks, ways of understanding and talking about the issues and talking about what's at stake. I know Linda's going to talk about this in more detail, but I also want to thank the artists involved in this project for so intently taking up the brief, coming from different angles and views to join together and creating room for kind of space for critical engagement with all of these issues. The exhibition has come out of a loose collaboration between artists, academics, curators, activists, and I think that's unusual. And it's also been informed by people from many other sectors of the community who we've talked to about pornography and trying to sort of take the pulse of the issue in New Zealand at the moment. So I want to acknowledge all the input of those people as well. And there's just a few other important thank yous I feel like I want to make. I want to acknowledge the institutional support of the University of Auckland and the Gus Fisher Gallery, and I had a whole lot of stuff about the amazing work of the installation that I've taken out because I don't want to ramble on for too long. And I also want to thank the Marsden Fund for funding the wider project, not just thanking them for the funding, but Marsden Fund staff at the Royal Society have been generous in their attention, support and guidance in relation to some of the difficult material we've been working with in this research. And personally, I want to thank colleagues on the project, Linda Tyler, Ginny Brown, Octavia Coldador, Alex Antevska, Rachel Liebert, Amelia Hitchcock and Paulette Benton-Greig, and Dakshi Gamage and Daniela Petrosino, who have been working with us on related projects, moving outside of pornography to look at representations of women, men, sex, sexuality, misogyny in social media and the public domain. Working in this area is only sustainable with support and collaboration with others. So I'm indebted to Paulette. We're all indebted to Paulette in particular, who's been project manager. We've got a lot of activities going on at the moment. She's been working day and night trying to get things moving, so thank you, Paulette. I've mentioned the website that we've just launched. It's www.sexualpoliticsnow.org.nz, and that will be documenting this exhibition and other activities we've been involved with. Also, just want to mention the Fringe project, the Fringe campaign, the Porn project that Amelia Hitchcock and Rachel Liebert and others have been curating. That came to a close this week, an intense 10 days of activities, and some of that is also documented on the website. So thank you everyone for coming this evening, and I want to say I think the art looks spectacular. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, but at the same time I hope you find the exhibition challenging, as I do, thought-provoking, and I hope you begin some new conversations about the issues that will keep going once you leave the gallery tonight. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Nicola, for that very erudite and all-encompassing description of the research and how it brings all the strands together in terms of what we're viewing here tonight. Finally, I'd like to ask Linda Tyler to bring our formal proceedings to a close with a special vote of thanks to the artists.
Recently at the Auckland Art Fair, I was approached by a complete stranger who insisted that she'd been told I'd be performing myself tonight, naked, covered with mud and chanting, she had heard. You'll be relieved to know that won't be happening, but I was reminded actually of my participation in Juliet Batten's 100 Women project on the beach at Te Henga in 1985, in which I did perform, chanting as we were instructed to do by Juliet and dressed in black, because despite being framed as collaborative, just like the dinner party project, feminist art practice in Aotearoa was a highly autocratic and hierarchical business, and you weren't allowed to wear whatever you wanted. Now, that was the last iteration of ANZART in Auckland, and it was the occasion in which I met Julie Ewington, who delivered a very succinct paper entitled Past the Post, Post-Feminism and Postmodernism, which was highly influential for my thinking, as it was for many others, including the new Dean of NICAI, who tells me that she has also quoted from it. So I was delighted, therefore, that Julie accepted the invitation to speak tonight and has been so generous with her comments. I found working with colleagues in the Faculty of Science to be very rewarding, and I'm most grateful to Nicola Gavey for approaching me to become involved with this project. Hers was a very timely reminder to me that words and images do not float free in a realm beyond responsibility. Like her, I was compelled by the linkages between pornography and art and visual culture, and the way in which the mainstream has come to flirt with what Susan Sontag, in her essay on the pornographic imagination, has called porn chic. In the 16 years that I have been working in art collections and university galleries, this exhibition is the only one that has provided any occasion in memory when a Vice-Chancellor has shown an interest in what was going to be shown in the art gallery. As organisers, we all were called to a meeting, and you'll remember this, Jane, which was essentially to discuss a risk management strategy around the show, which was expected to create a furore of media interest and controversy, and to dominate the talkback airwaves for months, with outraged mothers storming the clock tower in protest. I seem to remember Stuart mentioned the mother of 5 from Glenfield. Well, I think it is indicative of the erosion of pornography's status as a hot button issue that in this city, where we have to endure an annual parade of boobs on bikes, an exhibition which asks people to consider whether they think pornography is having an effect on visual culture has not caused a media storm at all. One response to Josie McNaught's Herald on Sunday article was to coin the neologism yawnography. However, in the university's response, I saw explicitly that everyone would prefer that we do not address the topic. It was almost as if we were impugned ourselves by having chosen obscenity as a subject. The nose wrinkling has not just been restricted to the university hierarchy. I've seen it in my own staff and also the staff of magazines where we advertise, who have either failed to engage with the exhibition or who seem embarrassed by it. I was surprised and not a little taken aback by the number of artists, inevitably white, male and heterosexual, who contacted me unsolicited, offering me their images because they had heard I was doing a show about sex, or about the body, or about erotica. And while I am grateful to Billy Apple for offering me historic images of his penis, and to Paul Hartigan and Richard Redaway for wanting to get in on the act, the selection of artists evolved from focus group processes where names were suggested and discussed, and then the artists approached and asked to respond to the brief, and some chose not to be involved. There are other New Zealand artists, such as Jae-hoon Lee, whose Asian Beauty Online project sampled internet pornography, and also the late Ian Scott, who used pornographic models in his paintings, where the interest is like German photographer Thomas Ruff's project, the aim to draw formal correlations between classic pornography and modern painting. That is not the approach of this exhibition. It instead comes from that deeply unfashionable place which is home to socially engaged, participatory art practices. I am, of course, also very grateful to all the artists involved, without whom we would not be here tonight, and to Megan Dunn in particular for her wonderful piece of writing for the catalogue, and for allowing us to produce images that she made in response to her years working at Showgirls. I'm also sure that the artists felt that the project had the potential to be completely cringeworthy in a political diatribe where their individuality was going to be blanketed by heavy rhetoric and their art was going to be shoehorned into a ready-made agenda. I don't think it is, but I guess it's up to you as an audience to decide. I would like to thank you all for your support and invite you to join us tomorrow for the public program at 1 p.m. when Julie Ewington and Rachel Liebert will be chaired by me in a discussion on art and social practice. Thank you everyone for coming along. Please continue to enjoy your evening. There will be 2 performances, the first one by Jyoti Wiley starting now, and then the second by Saoirse Forgan to follow. So thank you all for coming.